Hey, welcome back. I've got another video for us, and it's a look at this week's Old World Almanac, which is taking a look at saints and special rules in Warhammer the Old World. And this is a really interesting article because so far we've learned about how the turn is going to work, how magic works, but here we're getting a look at the smaller details of, you know, how the units are going to work more than just the actual game turn, and it's really nice to see because there's some really good reveals in here um, that show us a couple of new things, but mostly just go again and again, like I keep saying, and showing us that as much as this is a new game, it's really based on what was already in place. Um, and overall, I think, again, most people who are fans of Warhammer Fantasy are going to be pretty happy with this, although there are a couple of things that I could see being points of contention. So, they talk about living saints, and right off the bat, let's get into those. So, they're referring to Grail Knights, who are the best of the best of the Bretonnian Knights. They've taken the questing vow, and they've scoured the land, maybe gone across the entire old world in some cases, following visions of the lady from one impossible situation to another until finally she rewards their faith with a chance to sip from the chalice of the lady, and they gain um, the powers of a Grail Knight. And what that means is that they basically become these like larger than life rock stars of the Bretonnian knightly world. And in some of the older books, they're really referred to as you know true heroes, and they're treated like rock stars. These guys are special, and their new stats that they've shown us, I think, really kind of reflect that. So 38 points a model. I think that's pretty much exactly what they cost before. I don't have my book in front of me to check that, but around 38 points a model is what I recall a Grail Knight being. But their stats appear to be, you know, not just their stats, but their entire unit sheet seems to be much better once you take everything into account. So they show us the Grail Knights, their basic unit type, or a model type that's in the unit, and they have weapon skill 6, which is, that's like hero level human stats. Ballistic skill 2 doesn't matter because Bretonnian nobles don't shoot unless they're like hunting or something. They have strength and toughness of 4, which is really good for humans. Again, that's hero class. One wound, but again, you know, they are still just a unit. I keep referring to them as a hero unit, but they are still a unit, and giving them more than one wound would have been, I think, a bit much with this stat line and everything that comes with it. But Initiative 5 follows that. That's really fast. That's like Elf fast. 2 attacks, that's great, especially for a unit that's a heavy hitting charger. And Leadership 9. I mean, again, that's like, general level leadership. Very few models have above a 9 leadership. It's going to be only like the most special of characters in most cases. And then we have a Grail Guardian. That's their unit champion. He's got the exact same stats, but he has one more attack. And they ride war horses, which also give one attack and 8 movement. These are Bretonnian war horses. That does matter, and that comes up later in the article. These are heavy cavalry. They're on a 30 by 60 millimeter base. That's been confirmed now. Now, there is a tweet somewhere that Warhammer put out that said, hey, don't just go run off and convert all of your guys to new bases, because not every unit is going to get the same base size as we're seeing here. So that means that there might be some cavalry units that stay the same or even get bigger ones, which is interesting that they're going to have such a variety, it seems, of base sizes. It might get a little confusing, but at the same time, if it makes sense for the unit type, that's all right, I guess. But in this case, we do know 30 by 60. It's slightly bigger than the old 25 by 50 millimeter bases that cavalry used to be on, and already started custom making some movement trays that my guys are going to fit into, both regular cavalry and even a lance formation tray, which I'll be hopefully showing off soon. And they come in unit size of 3 plus. This just means that you have to have at least 3, but you can have as many as you want. In the past, I believe Bretonnians were limited to 15 models. I can't see wanting to go more than 15. just because of how big of a footprint 15 knights create. Although it is an epic looking unit when they're all ranked up, I can assure you, having set one up recently myself. And yeah, they're going past that. We have equipment. The Grail Knights have hand weapons, lances, heavy armor, and shields. So pretty much what they had before. And the Bretonnian war horses have iron shod hooves and barding. Barding is a horse armor, basically, if you're curious. Options: 7 points each for a Grail Guardian Champion, Standard Bearer, or a Musician. You can have all three, and they're 7 points each. In the past, Bretonians had to have a Standard Bearer. He was free and included, as I recall, but now it seems like he is optional. It was either the Standard or the Champion. I forget which one. One of them had to be in the unit, so now that's not the case. Um, we also can see that they can have a 100-point magic standard. That's the number of points you would normally get for like a battle standard bearer, like your hero level standard. So it's really crazy they can have that. And the Guardian, because again, these guys are mini heroes, he can have a knightly virtue, which is a special, unique thing that the Bretonians have to make them different. Where basically the character in question has something special about him, a virtue that gives him some sort of bonus in the game, some sort of benefit or you know a modifier that makes him better. And then you have magic items worth 50 points on him. Again, that's hero level magic items on a sergeant basically. So this unit can get very expensive. 10 of these guys is 380 points, 401 points with command, and then you can put a further 150 points on them. So 10 of these guys can easily, be edging in on 600 points, with nothing added to them in terms of characters. So definitely Death Stars are a thing, and Grail Knights look to be the very first one we've seen. So I guess that's something to keep in mind as we go into this. And Death Star is not a positive term in Warhammer Fantasy, in my opinion. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. This seems like an awful lot of points into one model, or one unit, sorry, which means to me they're going to be very, very good, and their stats already tell me they're going to be very good. But then there's special rules even more so. These are going to get explained as we go through the article. So I'm just going to list them off. Blessing of the Lady, Close Order, Countercharge, Finest War Horses, First Charge, Lance Formation, Living Saints, Swift Stride, and Grail Vow. So these are all going to be explained as we go. And yeah, so the very first thing that they say, after just kind of talking about how good their stats are, is that they have a lance, which is strength +2 when they're in combat, AP is -2, and it's armor bane 1, which means on a 6 to wound, a natural 6, no modifiers, you add an extra 1 in this case to the AP, making it AP -3. So armor bane X with whatever number is in the brackets, just basically on a 6 improves AP. So that's a very good rule, and it sort of balances out the idea of a lance on a strength 4 model, which in the past would have been a -3 to armor just every time. Now it's only on 6s, but it's still normally a -2. Still quite good. Very deadly to most units. Before I continue, I do want to point out they do say Bretonians, the Grail Knights here, have a 3+ armor save. Part of me hopes this is a typo, and they meant to write 2+, but it hasn't been corrected in the several days now, because I am a little bit late getting this one recorded. So yeah, I guess in the past they would have had a 2+ save from heavy armor, shield, mounted, and barded, but now it's down to a 3+. So I guess maybe the mounted bonus doesn't exist anymore, and now it's just whether or not the horse has armor or not, and these guys do. So, which is fair, because in the past I was always a little confused why they separated them. You know, I'm upset in a sense that it's only a 3+ now, which means Grail Knights are going to take a beating from shooting attacks, especially good shooting, like handguns. But yeah, I guess if it's across the game, it's not that bad. It's just sort of something we're going to have to get used to, that cavalry aren't as impervious to shooting as they used to be. Continuing down, they tell us that USRs, Universal Special Rules, are all throughout the game, and there's 75 of them, which is crazy. When I saw that number, I sort of had like a little like spit take moment where I was like, oh, I almost again spat out my coffee almost because it was a little bit of a shock to see there was that many because that's a lot. But when they explain it further, it's not that bad. Because now psychology, unit coherence, monster rules, all those things are going to be inside the Universal Special Rules, and it's going to make it a lot simpler to find. And what I mean by that is Universal Special Rules, almost guaranteed, are going to be in alphabetical order, starting with something like, say, a keyword like ambush, and it'll go all the way down to, zebra attack, or, whatever the Z stands for, which I doubt is anything. But what's also going to be in there is going to be, again, the psychology. So fear is not going to be its own section, or terror. You're not going to have to go find the unit section to see how coherency works. You're not going to have to go into the unit section to see what a monster is versus a monstrous infantry versus a monstrous cavalry. These things are all going to just be in the Universal Special Rules section. So even if it's 20 pages, it's going to be 20 pages in a row, which is a lot better than, the same number of pages spread throughout the book at various points, which is what it used to be. And so when you'd need to go look this stuff up in the past, you'd be flipping all over the place. It's still a problem in some editions of the game, like for example Horus Heresy 2.0. There are things sort of all over the place at times. This seems to me like a very positive evolution of layouts of their books. Call it a Universal Special Rule, attach it to the unit sheet, and you always know what rules they're going to be affected by, and you know where to find them because you just go to the USR section and follow alphabetical order. So that's a positive change. Now they get into these actual rules that have been shown to us here today. Close order, they mention, we already know what this is. This is just basically your standard fighting formation. But we also get told that while so how they put it, in the past you just had to know units that weren't skirmishers or fast cavalry operated in ranks and files, and what we now know is close order. What that means for having it inside the unit is that you don't have to worry about what formation. That's what they're saying here. So after that, they start telling us about close order being a good example of all this being, condensed and brought into a more sensible layout. Because in the past, you'd have to know about like skirmishers or fast cavalry and how they worked versus normal units. Now you just have to look at the unit's information. It'll tell you which formations they can use, and you just look it up. And by having all these formations attached to a unit, it keeps it a lot simpler for us as players to not have to go flipping all over the place again. And then they say likewise, like stomp attacks, which used to be under monster rules, are now just a standard USR, and it's possible to be more deliberate with which monsters have the rule. What that means to me is that some monsters are going to get stomped just like they used to have, and other ones are going to have it taken away because they don't feel it matches the rules, or maybe that's a good, easy way to balance a unit that's a little too good, it's overtuned, by taking away their stomp or their thunder stomp. That model won't perform as well in combat, which balances it out and makes it easier than having to, figure out how many points to raise it by, which is, the problem we see in 40k. And they also mention that it's easier to remember that you have Stomp because it's on the unit card, and that's true. With my Ogres, for example, they have a Stomp attack, as I recall. And I say as I recall because I constantly forgot it was there. I did not always recall that it was there, and I would skip it because I would just do my attacks, and I would just go, okay, next unit, or turns over, and I would forget they could Stomp. Now it's on the card, I shouldn't forget it. Beyond USRs, there are also rules that only govern units from a single army, which are collected in the relevant army lists. So basically, you won't find all the Orc and Bretonnian and Tomb King rules in the USR. Just like before, those are going to be attached to the actual faction list. And now we get into what the Grail Knights have. So the first Bretonia specific special rule that we get is Blessings of the Lady, where The Bretonians give up the first turn and take a second turn automatically so that they can pray, but as a result, during the game, they all get a 6+ ward save, all the knights at least, I'm guessing, whenever they take a wound. And it's a 5+ ward save instead if the attack is strength 5 or better. So this is super powerful. Ward saves are very seldom available to standard units. This isn't even just the fancy Grail Knights. This will probably be all Knights, and having this available to regular troops, a ward save, is really powerful. So this is super cool. As a special rule, it's a classic Bretonian one, so it's not new, and it's nice to see it returning. Now, they can lose this, though, they point out, and this is important because this happened before. If the unit breaks and runs away for any reason, or if a character in the unit declines a challenge, the lady abandons them, and for the rest of the game, they've lost it. There tends to not really be any, repeatable way to get it back. There is one way, or at least there used to be one way to get it back through an item, but we don't know that that item's going to exist. So you don't want to lose your honor, because then you also lose the blessing. So they do say close order, we've already covered, but then they give us countercharge. This is effective against monsters, cavalry, and chariots. And if our Grail Knights are charged by a unit with one of these unit types, and the distance is farther than the attacker's movement that they're going to go, the Grail Knights can roll die 3+1 in a response, and they move up, and the two of them meet wherever that is. And now they're both counting as charging, and the Grail Knights will get to use their 5 initiative in this attack to see who goes first. So that's super powerful. They're going to get their charging bonus for their lances, and they're likely going to go first against most enemy, anything, honestly, other than, maybe like things like elves and chaos, for example, will have higher initiative, but most things will not have higher initiative than them outside of characters. Next, they give us Finest Warhorses. This is sort of a play on an old rule. Bretonian warhorses used to have the special rule where they would always go their maximum distance of 8, even if they were barded, whereas other armies, when their horses were barded, they lost 1 inch of movement. This was because the Bretonian horses were like a mix of like the best war horses, but also there was elven horse lineage in them, so there was some sort of positive change there through the mixture. Now what it does is it simply lets you reroll ones when you charge, flee, or pursue before discarding dice. So remember, when you charge, it's your movement plus 2d6, and you pick the highest. Now, if there's any ones, you can re-roll them, and then you can discard and keep only the highest. And if their first charge, this is the next rule, of the game makes contact, the target unit loses rank bonus until the next round of combat. That's crazy. That is so good. You are talking about a unit that is probably relying on its ranks to help it beat the Bretonians, and now suddenly they don't have those rank bonuses. That's 3 off their combat resolution right away, and Bretonians are often going to have 2 or 3 ranks pretty much guaranteed, even if there's only just like 5 or 6 models. So this is a crazy good ability when you combine it with the Lance formation, which has their, as they say here, their signature devastating charge formation, which, as I believe they told us in the first article, lets all of your guys attack just like it used to, or at least most of them. Whereas in most units, only the front ranks attack. Now, like, most guys on the sides are going to attack. So you get a lot more knights attacking. And when you mix it with, again, the other unit losing their rank bonus, you are probably going to see Grail Knights just smashing through enemy units. So that's super cool. I like that one a lot. That's actually one of the more Death Star-ish unit rules I was talking about, where these guys here are just going to pick a target and delete it. Now, Living Saints. This is another great example of a special rule that's unique to the Grail Knights. Again, these guys drank from the cup of the lady, and now they're all characters in a sense where they can also issue challenges. It's not just their stats are better. They get to act like characters, and they can issue and accept, I'm assuming accept, challenges in combat. So this means that if somebody wants to go into maybe a challenge with your lord, a regular Grail Knight can do the challenge instead, and now they they are the one facing off against that model that might be, very good, and you're about to lose a Grail Knight, but it's better a Grail Knight than like your general. They also have Swift Stride. This gives them another 3 inches to their maximum charge range, and it's plus die 6 inches to any given charge, fight, or pursuit. So it's basically it's 3 plus die 6 added. So if I read that right, when they charge, they're going to have 8 inches plus 2d6 and select the highest, and they get to reroll ones on that. And then they're going to add 3 inches, so now it's actually 11 inches plus d6, and they're going to get a further d6. So it's going to get to be a lot of dice juggling, I think. So you're going to have like 11, roll a d6 and add that. So let's say you roll a 3, you're going to have 14, and then you're going to roll your 2d6, and then you're going to pick the highest after any ones are re-rolled. And so your basic Grail Knight unit here, actually, this doesn't even say it's just Grail Knights. This is probably just something some cavalry in general are going to have. You can have cavalry units that are going, what would the maximum charge there be? 8 plus upwards of 12 is 23? 23-inch charge possible? That's crazy. One of the things they've done this edition, based on what we've seen for how charges work, is they've reined in how far most units can charge. I believe I mentioned it during the movement article. There was a point where dwarves could charge upwards of 15 inches if you got lucky, and that's like, it never should have happened that way. But now it seems like Bretonnian Grail Knights, because of this mixture of rules, are going to be able to go 23 inches possibly, and that's not even technically the maximum, as we'll see in just a moment. And finally, they'll have a Grail Vow. This is a returning rule. Again, these guys drank from the Grail. They are unaffected by fear and terror, so they don't care. Scary things, they'll just charge them, or if they get charged, it's whatever. They already faced all these things when they were on their quest. And they fight with magical attacks, so anything that has immunity to regular attacks, these guys cut through that and can still do damage. That's like ghosts and things like that. It's a nice thing to have on a unit, and again, they drank from the cup, so they are magical beings at this point. And the first time they fail a break test as Grail Knights, they just automatically fall back in good order. They don't break and flee in terror. They'll just fall back, at least once before maybe they give up and run away for real. So that's nice as well. You probably still lose your your blessing, which means they're going to lose their ward save. But as a result, at least they won't get run down automatically, so that's good. On top of that, you can load up on even more abilities with magic items and knightly virtues. We talked about this above. The unit can have 100 points of magic banner, and the champion can have a virtue and another 50 points of magic items for himself. So you can really tailor the unit to be what you want it to be and have the benefits. So for example, they give us the virtue of the impetuous knight. This guy and his unit get another 3 inches added to their charge. That's on top of this. So 8 inches plus 3 plus 3. So now the basic charge for these guys is 14 inches, which is crazy. Like, unless I'm missing something, these guys can charge at least 14 inches. In most games, you're probably going to still be about 2 feet apart. That means that there's only 10 inches between them at the start of the game. If the enemy goes second in this case, but they won't. The enemy's going to go first, which means if the enemy moves up 8 inches, let's say, standard human movement of 4, and they march it up 8, or if they use the actual marching order where they can go triple, they go 12 inches, you're basically going to automatically be in charge range because of 14 inches plus the die 6 plus the other 2 die 6, select the highest, and then here you get another die 3 on top of that. You may apply a further die 3 when they charge. This unit can now go something like 29 inches maximum. It's not going to happen most games, but the fact that these guys can go 29 inches, that's a threat range that is it's unheard of in fantasy. And honestly, it's unheard of in most games. It's just I'm having a hard time sort of like accepting these guys are this good. I'm a little concerned again about the Death Star feel of these guys because this is before you've added any characters to them. You're not getting any bonuses from characters, so we'll have to see how that gets balanced out. Because if you can make these guys even tougher or give characters that give them other saves, like the damsel we talked about last week, the damsel gives them magic resistance -2, meaning that casting magic against this unit is at -2 to whatever you roll. These guys can get really tough really fast. Carrying on past that, we do have one magic weapon they're showing off. This is the Dragon Slaying Sword. So, combat range, strength of the user, AP -0, magical attacks, nothing special because these guys already have magic attacks, but they're Monster Slayer. This guy becomes a Monster Slayer. We don't know what that means, but I can assume it's something like always wounding a monster on, like, say, a 4 or a 5. There were things like that before. It's probably just what it is. It's probably a way to wound monsters, no matter what their toughness really is. You're always wounding them on a 4 or a 5. Maybe you get like AP -1 against that monster. There's a few things that could be. And then the Blazing Banner is the magic standard they decided to show. It's not the most amazing banner because all it does is give you flaming attacks, and against most armies, let alone units, flaming attacks aren't that great. But when they are functional, when they do help, it helps a lot. Tomb Kings are probably an army that'll be kind of scared of this because flaming attacks cause double wounds against things that are flammable. And in the past, Tomb King characters in some of their units were flammable because they were mummies and they would light on fire easy. So this unit charging into a unit of like Tomb Guard and a Tomb King could maybe do double wounds against them. So like they hit the Tomb King, and every wound they cause is actually 2 wounds. So that in that case would be really good. Also, flaming attacks were good against regeneration, which we've already, I believe, a couple of articles ago saw. Regeneration was simply a monster or a character or creature, whatever, that can re-knit itself. It comes back together after you hurt it. So basically, they take the wound because they failed armor or whatever, but then they also get a chance to see if they basically regenerate afterwards, and it's like on a 4+. If you hit that unit with a flaming attack, they lose regeneration. So there are times this is going to be very powerful, and when those times happen, this will be a banner you're going to be happy to have. Universal special rules, these are provided all over the place in the book, they're telling us, and some units are going to have just like tons of these, but then even more regular units are going to have a lot. So like they say Bretonian squires, which are like peasants on ponies, they're going to have move through cover, they're going to have open order, peasantry, skirmishers, and vanguard. Hopefully we'll get some more on those later on. I can take guesses, but I'm going to leave those alone for now. Maybe cover them in a different video. I am putting all this stuff we've learned so far together into a single video. I'm just sort of waiting to see what else we get, because I do think we're coming up to the point where they're going to start giving us faction focuses. Next week is army selection, so we'll know how to pick an army. That's going to be cool. Because we still don't know exactly how that works. In the past, it was either, a certain percentage minimum or maximum for this type of unit or that type of unit, or maybe it was like for every 1,000 points you could have like 1 of these or 3 of those, or you had to have 3 of these. There were minimums and maximums basically, and I assume based on all the other stuff we've seen so far, where there's lots of returning rules, I imagine it's going to be quite similar. I don't think it's going to be like 40k. You can have 3 of everything, or you can have 6 of those. I don't think that would work here. I think it would get too crazy if you could have 3 units of Grail Knights, based on what we just read. So I do think we're going to have something similar, but we just got to wait and see. And I'm going to keep kind of putting everything together so that there's one big super video that can be sort of a real go-to once we have all the information. And that'll come up around the time that we get announced that the first faction video is going to come up, which I do think we're going to get. And then we'll get 9 weeks of faction focuses at that point, followed by the pre-order period. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, questions, leave them down below. And as always, have yourselves a great day.